Welcome to our town hall. My name is Tim Zimmerman. This is session 3 of a number of meetings that we're going to be doing in regards to the Andrew Carnegie principles for personal achievement. If you were with us in the last 2 meetings, you know that we went through 13 of the principles that Andrew Carnegie professed to help him become a multimillionaire. And actually, over a 20-year period of time, Napoleon Hill studied successful individuals and found these principles to be a common denominator in all of their success. One of the things I wanted to start off with is a little article from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, just to read a small portion of it. What he talks about is that this book was actually inspired by Andrew Carnegie, who disclosed his formula of personal achievement to the author Napoleon Hill many years ago. Carnegie not only made himself a multimillionaire, but he made millionaires of more than a score of men to whom he taught his secret. Another 500 wealthy men revealed the source of their riches to Napoleon Hill, who had spent a lifetime of research in bringing their message to people in all walks of life, who are willing to give their thoughts, ideas, and organized plans in return for riches. It's interesting to note just how many people attributed their success to these principles, and more specifically to Andrew Carnegie. Some of them, just to read you, many that we actually know: Henry Ford, William Wrigley Jr., Cyrus Curtis, George Eastman, Eastman started Eastman Kodak, Charles Schwab, Theodore Roosevelt, J. Ogden Armour and Hammer people, John D. Rockefeller, F.W. Woolworth, Clarence Darrow, Woodrow Wilson, William Howard Taft, Luther Burbank, Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, and that's just to name a few. So the purpose of these meetings is to actually work on the specific principles for achievement that you can actually use in the comfort of your own home. And in doing so, if you become more effective in using them where you are now and then actually go out into the real world situation and use them, then you're more apt to be successful in everything that you do. Again, the purpose of all of this is to have you use these principles in the comfort of your own home and then to use it out into the real world situation. If you were with us the last week and the time before, you know that the 13 principles are, let's go through them. Actually, again, all of this is about you as an individual, how to actually use your brain and your subconscious mind to control your thoughts. As we talked about before, your thoughts create the circumference, our world in which we live in, which we create our desires from. And if we take our desires and create plans of actions and goals in our desires, build a team, use our will and our decision-making capability within that team, and we do all of this with determination, we transmute our sexuality to actually build more energy within our system. What happens is that we're able to use our creative visualization, autosuggestion, use faith talks, pep talks, to develop more self-confidence and enthusiasm within ourselves, create a better communication within ourselves and with others, to actually develop a specialized knowledge of an area that we want to become more effective in, and the area of our life which will actually become our life work. And to do that and have a pleasing personality will help us encompass everything. Now, what we talked about also last week was that in looking at different training programs, actually the Andrew Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching did a study. And what they found was that there was really only 3 areas in which an individual can be trained. Those areas are represented in the training triangle. Those areas being knowledge, skills, and attitude. What this study found is that in looking at all of the training programs available, high school, college, on-job training, technical schools, correspondence schools, one-day, two-day seminars, that about 95% of the emphasis of those training programs is in the knowledge aspect. In other words, they get up in front of you and they tell you what you need to be doing to be successful. But amazingly, the study also went on to find that about 85% of your success doesn't necessarily come from what you know. What it comes is from your skills and attitude area. In other words, it's not so much what you know that makes us or makes you who you are, but what we do with what we know. What we found is that in working a little bit in the knowledge area and then developing skills, that's going to affect your attitude. Is attitude important? Yes or no? Well, sure it is. Well, how do you actually change an attitude? If we look at the cycle for development, we look at really 4 aspects that we have to go through to develop and to change an attitude. One is that the person really has to feel a need to change. In other words, they need to say, I need to do something. But if someone needs to do something, are they necessarily going to go ahead and do it? Not necessarily. They're going to also have to want to. Now, if they want to, is that going to make it happen? No. They're going to need to. They want to. If they say they can, if they say, I can do it, and then what else? I will do it. Now, if someone says to you, okay, I will go to lunch with you, or I will pick up the garbage, or I will make my bed, Mom and Dad, does that mean that they're going to do that? No, not necessarily. So the person has to say, I need to, I want to, I can do it, I will do it, but then has to go one step further and say, I am doing it. In other words, that action actually has to take place. In doing that, then they will be receptive to the knowledge that's necessary to do the job right. If they develop a certain amount of skill in doing that and actually have some positive experiences in the skill of doing that, then what they're going to do is their attitude, what's it going to be? Is it going to be more positive or is it going to be negative? Well, what will probably happen is their attitude will become more positive, because we said that everyone has a comfort zone, right? Everyone has a comfort zone and an uncomfort zone. We go to work here, we have lunch here, we go home here. And what happens? When we venture outside of our comfort zone, if we venture outside of our comfort zone, have a little knowledge in a particular technique to use, let's say it's on how to be a better conversationalist, like we worked on last week, and we have a knowledge about that, and then we don't go and get the skill in regards to it, if we use it out in the real world situation, are we going to have a positive experience using it? Well, not necessarily. But if, again, in the comfort of our own home, we develop the skills of using it and actually have a positive experience 1 or 2 or 3 times, and develop that within our comfort zone, when we go out into the real world situation, are we going to use it? Yes or no? Well, again, we'd probably be more apt to use it. But if we develop the skills and have positive experiences doing it here, then our attitude is more apt to be what? Well, it's more apt to be positive, right? Now, if our attitude is more positive, what is that going to do to ourselves? How are we going to be in our inner self? Well, do you think we might even become a little bit enthusiastic? Yes? How about a little bit more self-confident? Well, sure. And if we're more self-confident and more enthusiastic here, Okay? Then when we look at doing some more, we might say, well, I don't necessarily need to, but I'd like to. I'd like to become more effective in communications. I'd like to make more money. I'd like to know how to look at my goals and develop the other aspects of my life. Other aspects maybe besides just business. I'd like to know how to control my thoughts. I'd like to know how to control my emotions. There's many things, and it's incredible to me that out of all the things that we've been trained in as kids, that there's a few things that we haven't been. One is that there's things that we know, and there's things that we know that we don't know. Okay? Like most of us out there don't know how to be a brain surgeon. We know we don't know that. But it's amazing to me that there's about 80% of our life that we don't even know that we don't know. For instance, do you know how to control your thoughts? Do you know how many thoughts come up in your mind on a daily basis? When you go to sleep and you're in that la-la land, do you know that you can actually use that to help gain what you want in your life? Okay, well, the question is, if we can become 10 or 20 or 30% more effective in all of these areas, what will it mean to you personally? What will it mean to you financially? What will it mean to your family? What will it mean to everything that you do in your world? Okay? So our goal is to work on these areas to help you become more effective at home using them and to actually use them in the real world situation. Okay? What I'd like you to do at this point in time is go and get a piece of paper and a pen, because there's going to be a number of things that I'm going to be working on. What I'm going to do when we come back is actually work on and talk about what we did last week. And then we'll actually work on some areas where you can become more effective right there at home to use in the real world situation. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. Did you get your piece of paper and pen? What I'd like to do is go back to what we did in the first session and in the second session, just as a bit of a reminder to you. In the first session, what we talked about is that in your beingness and in looking at your brain in particular, that your brain goes through certain wavelengths. Okay? Throughout the day and while you're at night and dreaming and everything like that, your brain goes through 4 different wavelengths, scientifically proven, from beta, alpha, theta, and delta. And your brain goes through these wavelengths on a constant basis. Okay? We also talked about that when we slow our breathing and we breathe rhythmically. What do we mean by rhythmically? When we breathe deeply into our stomach, remember we had that little exercise where if we put our hands like this and breathe into our stomach, our fingers move apart and then we breathe back in. Now if we do that, let's say for 8 breaths that we breathe in, then what we do is we hold it for half of that. So we would hold it for 4 breaths and then exhale. Let's do it one more time. We would inhale 8 breaths, hold it for 4, exhale the same 8 breaths, and then hold that for 4, and then inhale. Now what happens when you do this is that you bring about 60% more oxygen into your body. If you look at a baby that's sleeping, a baby will breathe that way. As we grow up, become children, adults, everything like that, what happens is that as we grow up, we forget to breathe this way. So when coming back to this form of breathing, a couple things happens. One, it helps relax you. The other is that it helps you go into these lower levels of brain activity. And what they found, what scientists have found, is that in these levels of brain activity is where your creative imagination and where healing actually takes place. In actuality, scientists don't know what this delta level is all about. This is deep sleep. These are what the yogis of India actually are able to do during their meditations. Okay? So we talked about that. In talking about our subconscious mind, we talked about that your mind thinks in pictures. We talked about memory, that your mind thinks in pictures. In other words, if I said the word house, what do you think? What do you think of? What do you picture? Do you see the black letters H-O-U-S-E? No, you see a house. Maybe your house or a house that you want, a house that you're looking at, maybe a friend's house. If I said the word car, what do you think of? Do you see the black letter C-A-R? No, you actually see a car. So we said that within your brain, within your subconscious mind, your mind thinks in pictures. Okay? And that's how we actually think. Now, to control our thoughts, what we need to do is actually realize a couple things. One is that out of everything that we are in our life, there's only one thing that we can control, and that is our thoughts. And how we control our thoughts are by actually watching our thoughts. When thoughts come up, in actuality, what scientists have shown is that your thoughts are like, actually you can only think one thought at a time. It's like it's coming up through a straw. Okay? If you hold one thought there, no other thoughts can come in. Okay? So in doing the concentration exercises and the breathing exercises, what happens is that slows your thoughts naturally. With the concentration exercises, we talked about sitting in a comfortable chair with your spine straight, doing the rhythmic breathing, and putting your focus of your eyes on your point between your eyebrows. If you feel up here, you feel the conjuncture of the bone between your eyebrows. That's the point where if you focus your eyes there, it helps you get into the alpha and theta wavelengths right from doing that. It also affects your pineal gland, which is your spiritual center. All right? Now in doing that and focusing your eyes there and then thinking upon an object, whether that be a crystal or a flower or a candle, if you're doing that with your eyes open or your eyes closed, if you're focusing on that, what happens is that your thoughts will come up. When your thoughts come up, other than the object that you're trying to concentrate on, you realize it, and all that you do is come back with your focus into the thought that you want to think, into the object that you want to focus your attention on. Now when you do that, what happens is that as you continue to do that, you're focusing on one object, you start thinking other thoughts, you come back to the object. As you're doing that, what you're doing is you're training your brain and your subconscious mind to actually work with you. Okay? We talked about last week actually trying to do that as you go to sleep. When you go to sleep at night and you're in that la-la land, you're thinking about what happened to you during the day, you think about what you have to do the next day, take control of those thoughts. If you're thinking about some situation that happened and you become angry, well, take control of those thoughts. Actually look at the situation and process through it. Okay? Actually watch your thoughts while you're doing that, time and time again. As you go to bed also, one of the things that you can do is breathe rhythmically. In the exercise that we did last week, we also went through a relaxation exercise whereby tensing your muscles throughout your body, breathing rhythmically, what happens is that brings more oxygen into your body and actually helps you relax, helps you go down into the lower wavelengths of your brain helps you control your thoughts, and controlling your thoughts, you control your world. We talked about how your thoughts are like if you were to take a pebble and you had a bowl of a fishbowl, a round fishbowl, and if it was filled 3/4 filled with water, if you took a pebble, dropped it in the water, when it hit the water, what would happen? It would create a ripple. The ripple would be symmetrical and would go out to the sides of the fishbowl and come back in. That's just like our thoughts. When we think a thought and we put it out there into the world, it comes right back to us. That's a law of karma. It's the same thing. As you sow, so shall you reap. We also have said it, what goes around comes around. Okay? Jesus said, as you believe in your heart, it is done unto you. So, again, when you're throwing your thoughts out there, they are coming back to you. It's interesting to note also, and I don't know if many of you should agree with this, actually psychiatrists have shown that when you look at someone and you see things that you like, it's really things about yourself that you like. Okay, would you agree with that? Yes or no? Shake your head one way or another. Yeah, raise your hand. Okay. The other aspect of that is also true. If you see things in other people that you don't like, there are also things about yourself that you don't like. Okay? So take that in and realize that if you're talking about someone else, you're looking at someone else maybe in a not positive way, that it might be something about yourself that you're really seeing in them. Okay? Last week we also talked about, as far as communications go, we also talked about how to be a better conversationalist. And we talked that there were 3 fundamentals in being a better conversationalist. The first fundamental was to actually be a good listener. And why is that important? If you're talking with someone and you're reading the paper, or you're looking through your mail, or you're doing some other work, or you're on the phone with someone and you're typing in the computer, are you giving them your attention? No. Okay, do they know that? Yes, they do. Okay? So to be a better conversationalist, the first thing we need to do is to be a better listener. The other aspect of that is that who has to dominate the talking? If you're being a good listener, are you doing all the talking? No. You're letting them talk. You're also looking at them, giving them visual approval and verbal approval. Visual approval is a few nods of the head, say yes, okay? The verbal approval, in many cases, just say, yeah, and then what happened? Okay? So that was the first fundamental. The second fundamental in being a better conversationalist was, I gave you a couple examples of this. It wasn't just to ask questions, because you can, and I would say the vast majority of us have talked to people and said, hi, how are you? Good. How's the family? They're good. Okay. See you later. Okay, if you talk to somebody and say, hi, how are you? And they say, I'm terrible. You say, what? Oh, that's good. See ya. Right? Or that's too bad. See ya. Okay? Now, if we're really trying to let people know that we're genuinely interested in them, if we're really creating a pleasing personality, this is a why here. If we're really creating a pleasing personality, if we're really communicating with them, if we're really sowing thoughts that we will reap, we're giving of ourselves because we're going to get. Okay? What we need to do is to not just ask any kind of questions, but to ask what? The right kinds of questions. Okay. In asking the right kinds of questions, what we did, we also talked about memory. In talking about memory, talking about brain and the memory, we said that there's 3 fundamentals to memory. impression, repetition, and association. Well, what does impression mean? Impression means, again, that we think in pictures, so we have to get a stack of silly, goofy pictures together, or get a picture in our mind and repeat it there enough to actually get an impression, to hold an impression there. So we have an impression, we repeat it enough to keep it there, and then we associate it to something of importance. Okay? The stack of silly, goofy objects that we went through, again, in Being a Better Conversationalist, were the questions that you can ask. There were 6 of them. And what I'm going to do right now is just go through the stack of silly, goofy objects with you, just real quick, just so you have them down. Make sure that you actually use this out in the real world situation. The first object, everyone, was a walnut nameplate. On top of the walnut nameplate, we slammed a red brick house on it, scratched it all up. Coming out of the chimney of the red brick house was a white work glove. We knew it was a work glove because it had soot on it. In the palm of the work glove was a Boeing 747 airplane, and it was gray. But instead of propellers, we had Wilson wooden tennis rackets, and screwed into the middle of the tennis racket was a pink 13.5 watt light bulb. Now, if you weren't with us in that meeting, and you're going, what is this guy talking about? What I'd like you to do is just take a deep breath, let it out, take another one, let it out, put your paper down, and just go through this stack again. Picture in your mind this stack of silly, goofy objects. The first object being a walnut nameplate. It has your name on it, Y-O-U-R-N-A-M-E. On top of the nameplate, we slam a red brick house. What color is it? Well, it's red. This is red brick, right? Coming out of the chimney is a white, what everyone? A white work glove. In the palm of the work glove is a Boeing 747 airplane. Instead of propellers, we have Wilson wooden tennis rackets, and screwed into the middle of the tennis racket is a pink 13.5 watt light bulb. Okay, so that's the impression and repetition part. Now let's associate that stack of objects to the questions that we can ask people. Okay? If we were to associate that to the questions that we can ask someone out in a real world situation, the first object being the walnut nameplate would stand for what is your name? Then the second object is the red brick house, would stand for where do you live? The third object is the white work glove, that would stand for where do you work? The next object is the Boeing airplane, would stand for do you get a chance to travel? The next object is the Wilson tennis rackets. Do you have any hobbies? And the last object is the pink, what is it? Pink light bulb. How many watts is it? 13.5. And that stands for what are your ideas in regards to something? Okay? So again, the questions that we can ask somebody is, what is your name? Where do you live? Whereabouts do you work? Do you get a chance to travel? What are your hobbies? And what are your ideas in regards to something? Okay? Then we said, well, if we didn't have the third fundamental, what might happen is that we just go through that stack and say, what's your name? Where do you live? Where do you work? Do you get a chance to travel? Do you have any hobbies? And you don't have any ideas, do you? And that wouldn't make that good of a conversation, right? So we said that the third fundamental is to use something that Kipling wrote. And what he wrote was, there are 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are who, what, when, where, why, and how. So the third fundamental was to use the 6 honest serving men. And their names again, everyone, are, go ahead, say it out loud. You're right at home. No one's going to hurt you. Their names are who, what, when, where, why, and how. So if, for instance, you talk to someone and said, do you work around here? And they said, well, yeah, I work over at, I work with the Chicago Bears. What might you say? Well, you got season tickets? No. You'd say, how long have you been doing that? What do you like most about it? What do you like least about it? Do you get a chance to travel with the team? Yeah, does that give you any time to have any hobbies? Huh? What are your ideas in regards to Ditka? Okay? So, in other words, what happens is that when you develop the 6 honest serving men within the questions, you're doing what again? Now, if you actually had a conversation, you asked these questions, the other person answered, they did most of the talking, what are they going to think about you? Are they going to think that you're a chatterbox? No, they're going to think what? That you were genuinely interested in who? In them. You were genuinely interested in what they were about. You asked them questions in regards to it. And it's amazing to me, I've done many training programs with people that have worked together for 20 years. And it's amazing to do this training program and to have the people who have known each other for years find out so much more information from each other. It's just absolutely amazing to me. Okay? So what else did we talk about? Okay, so we talked about developing a pleasing personality by being a better conversationalist. That's part of it. There's other things that we're going to be working on. In doing that, of course, that's part of communications and part of developing self-confidence. Now, if you actually worked on this at home and you became effective, whether that's working with your spouse or working with one of your kids or working with the wall on it, and you became comfortable with it, and then you used it out in the real world situation and it actually worked, which it does, by the way, how would you feel about yourself? Well, you'd feel a little bit more confident, right? And then the next time you were asked to go to a party, would you feel confident about going there? Would you feel comfortable being able to converse with other people? Well, sure you would. And that's all part of what we're talking about doing. Because if you really want to be successful in life, you can't just do it by yourself. Okay? It's amazing to me that people want all these other things out of life. They say, well, when I get money, things will be different. When I win the lotto, things will be different. It's amazing to me that people look at outside circumstances changing themselves rather than looking with inside themselves and becoming the person they want to become. The goal in the training that I'm doing is to actually give you some areas where you can become more effective in, but not just tell you what you should be doing. In many cases, you know what you should be doing. Okay? You already know many of the things. You should be doing these things. You should be asking more questions. You should be nicer to other people. You should be loving to other people. You know that what goes around comes around. Okay? You probably didn't know that you can control your thoughts. You probably didn't know that you can control your emotions. And those are some of the things that by working with these techniques, you'll be able to do. Okay? So, let's do this. What I want to do right now is I want to take a break so I can clear the board. And then when we come back, what we'll do is we'll work on 2 areas for you to specifically have in your home to feel more comfortable with all of this, to remember all of these aspects, so you can work on it on a session-by-session basis and become more effective. And again, the question is, if you became more effective in 10 or 20 or 30% more effective in any of these areas, if you became that much more effective in any of these areas, what would it mean to you personally? What would it mean to your family? What would it mean to your associates? What would it mean to your business? What would it mean to the cash you have in the bank? Okay? Only you can answer that. What I'm here to do is to give you some knowledge, some skills, and a better attitude about using it so you'll actually use it in the real world situation. Okay? We'll be right back and we'll get into all of that in just a second.
Supposed to be his song. That's all I heard that song before.
Welcome back. I have a question for you. If there were a way that you could understand and know the principles of achievement that we're going through from Andrew Carnegie, would you want to hear about it? Okay. Well, what I'd like to do now is have you go ahead and put your pen and paper down, sit back in your chair or in the couch, just sit back, look at me, take a deep breath, let it out, take another deep breath, let it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stack a bunch of silly, goofy objects, one on top of each other, and all that I want you to do is to visualize them in your mind's eye. The first object is you sitting in a chair with your fingers together on your knees, breathing deeply and rhythmically, focusing on the area between your eyebrows. And so that's the first object. Second object is that your brain is purple and it's pulsating, going doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. Coming out of your third eye area is a black submarine. We know it's a submarine because it has a torpedo tube. Screwed into the middle of the torpedo tube is a pink 13.5 watt light bulb. But this is a gigantic light bulb. But instead of the filament, we have a red beach blanket. In the beach blanket is an object. That object is holding a yellow goalpost. Okay? Let's go through that. And at home, what I'd like you to do is say it out loud with me so I make sure that you have it down. When you say it out loud, forget the other people in the room if there are any. Everyone say it together. Okay? The first object is you doing what? Sitting in a chair, your spine is straight, your hands are where? On your knees, your breathing is deep and rhythmic, right? You're focusing your eyes where? In the area between your eyebrows, where those bones meet. Your brain is purple, pulsating. The next object coming out of your third eye area is what? It's a submarine. Screwed into the torpedo tube of the submarine is this gigantic light bulb. How many watts is it? 13.5. What color is it? Pink. Instead of the filament in the light bulb, we have a red beach blanket. Basking in the sun in the beach blanket is a object. The object is holding a yellow goalpost. On one of the sides of the goalpost, and the goalpost itself, let me give you an example. The object is holding a goalpost that has like a Y in it, like that. And the one side of the goalpost is this gigantic fish bowl. It has 3 fish in it. One is a gray whale, one is a killer whale, and one is a porpoise. What color is the gray whale? Well, it's gray. What color is the killer whale? Killer whales are black and white, right? What color is the porpoise? Let's make the porpoise white. It's an albino porpoise. On the other side of the goalpost is this gigantic business proposal. And we know it's a business proposal because it has P/A on it. Jumping on top of that business proposal are 3 men. They're in a huddle and their heads are all together, their hair is all intermingled within each other. The first, number 1, has a big red number 1 on it. On the one arm, he's holding on to a grandfather clock. The other arm, he's holding on to a wooden store Indian. The Indian has his hand up. The next gentleman, number 2, has big red number 2 on it. He's holding in his one hand, what? Well, you don't know, do you? On the one hand, he's holding a farm implement machinery, a tractor, and the other hand he's holding a balances. You know, you see the balances for the balance of justice, like this, okay? On the one balance, it has F/U on it, and the other balance has a check mark on it. Now the third gentleman has a big 3 on him. What he has in his hand, one, he has a money bag, and the other hand he has a big mallet. And it's one of those judges' mallets. Okay, you know the judges' mallets where they say, "Court come to order." They pound on their desk. Okay. So let's go back to number 1. The first object, everyone, is you doing what? You are sitting on a chair. Your spine is straight. Your hands are on your knees. You're breathing deeply and rhythmically. You're focusing on your third eye area. Your brain is pulsating. This great purple liquid coming out of your third eye is a submarine. Screwed into the torpedo tube is a pink 13.5 watt light bulb instead of a filament. We have a red beach blanket with an object basking in the sun. The object is holding a yellow goalpost. On one side of the goalpost is the big fish tank with a gray whale on it, a killer whale in it, and a porpoise in it. And they're playing, having a good old time on it. The other aspect, the other side of the goalpost, smashed into the goalpost, actually coming through the proposal, is a business proposal. We know it's a business proposal because it has P/A on it. Jumping on top of the business proposal is 3 men in a huddle. And they're businessmen. They all have suits on, but they have numbers on them. First one, number 1, has what in his hands? Well, he's got his arm around a grandfather clock and a cigar store Indian, right? Number 2 has what? Has the balance of justice with F/U on it and a check mark on the other side, and is holding what else in his hand? Oh, you know what? You're right. See? Did you know that I didn't do it right? See, he was just trying to catch you. Number 2 has what on his hands? He has the balance and the farm tractor. We know it's a farm tractor because we see the tractor has its wheels going up here, right? And his big tractor is running up his arm on number 2. Number 3 has what? Has a bag full of money and what in his other hand? The mallet, okay, the justice mallet. Now, number 3, the other thing that's going on is that he's kind of doing a jig with his legs because on his one leg, on his left leg, he's got a big bulldog on it. We know it's a bulldog because he's got bull horns on his head. Riding this bulldog is a monk, and we know he's a monk because he's got a gray monk's robe on, and his head is bopping up and down out of the clouds. Okay, let's go through them again. The first one, object, everyone, is you doing what? Sitting in a chair. You're breathing rhythmically and deeply. You're focusing on your third eye. Your brain is pulsating. You have what coming out of your third eye? A submarine. What color is the submarine? Submarine's black. Screwed into the torpedo tube of the submarine is the pink light bulb. Instead of the filament, we have a red beach blanket. In the middle of the beach blanket, laying it, basking in the sun, is an object. The object is holding onto a yellow goalpost. On one side of the goalpost is a gigantic fish tank. It's got 3 mammals in it. One is the gray whale, one is the black and white killer whale, and the other is the white porpoise. On the other side of the goalpost, we have stuck into it a business plan of action, a business proposal. On top of the business proposal are how many men? There's 3 men. Number 1 is doing what? He's holding on to the grandfather clock in his one arm, and on the other arm he's holding on to the cigar store Indian. Number 2, again, they're all in this huddle. Number 2, they're all connected. Number 2 has what running up his arm? A farm tractor, right? And in the other hand, he's holding what? The balance of justice, right? One side has F/U, the other has a check mark. Number 3 is holding on to what? One is big thing of money on the one hand, and the other hand he's holding on to the judge's mallet. On his left leg, he's trying to kick off a bulldog. We know he's a bulldog because he has bull horns on him. Riding the bulldog is a monk. What kind of robe does he have? What color is it? It's gray. Monks wear gray robes. And his head is bobbing up and down into the clouds. In the clouds, as he comes up out of the clouds, he sees 3 gods. Now, these gods have 3 different uniforms on. One has a coach's uniform, We know it's a coach's uniform because it has coach on it. The second has a cheerleader's uniform on it. We know it's a cheerleader because it has one of those pleated skirts on it, and she's got a megaphone. She's saying, I know you can do it, I know you can do it. And he's saying, I feel you can do it, I feel you can do it. The third God is a salesman. We know he's a salesman because he's wearing his nice business suit. In his one hand, he has a briefcase. In the other hand, he has a piece of paper. Okay. Let's go through it slowly. From the beginning. And again, repeat it all and picture it in your mind. The more we repeat it, the more you actually picture it. There's a method to my madness, believe it or not. But what will happen is that when we get done with this and we actually can picture it in our mind, then we'll associate it to the aspects of the areas that you can become more effective in. Okay? So the first object, everyone, is who? It's you doing what? Sitting in a chair, your back straight, you're breathing rhythmically,